All right. I believe we should be live and good to go, which is extremely exciting. So, hello to everybody that is here on this lovely stream. This is the first part of the podcast on air, which you may have heard a little bit about at the opening ceremony earlier today, but it's going to be taking place with multiple parts over multiple days to create essentially a full podcast episode in a weekend to kind of showcase all of the many different wonderful things that go into audio drama and audio fiction, all of the many different wonderful roles that can be played. This is the very first part and the first stage, which is the writing and the editing. That's happening right now, right here live. So you've come to the right place. Tomorrow on Saturday, there will be a voice acting workshop. And then on Sunday, there will be sound design, both for the script that's going to get created and edited here. And at the end of all of that, we should ideally have a lovely little full audio episode made collaboratively, which is really, really wonderful. So, a little bit in advance about how this is going to work. Uh, I am Emma. I am a writer and an actor, stage actor, voice actor, actual player, and writer of scripts for both audio and stage. I have performed in a couple different audio dramas. You may have heard me in Breathing Space, Book of Ezekiel Bradshaw, a few different pieces, and have written for audio fiction before. I wrote the show Arrhythmia. I've written an episode in the upcoming show This Address Does Not Exist. I love audio drama and audio fiction. I've loved it for a really long time. I think it's a phenomenal storytelling medium. So I am very excited to be doing this. It's going to be really fun. The way this is going to work is that for the first little while here, I'm going to be writing, drafting, creating a script live on this document that you should see before you. And it's going to be done through a little bit of poll input from you, the people currently watching. So we've got polls set up to determine a few key aspects of this script and what I will have to work off because I don't currently have an idea for what this episode is going to look like. I have some general thoughts about what the length might look like and the number of voices, but there are some central components that we're going to determine right now. The first of those is the genre that this script is going to take on. So, in a moment or two, you're going to see a poll appear in the Twitch chat listing a couple different genres between which you can choose. So, we're going to put that in now. Go take a look for that and pick out of those five genres the one that you would most like this episode to hew to. Uh, this is not the time for my soapbox about the fallibility and malleability of genre, especially in the speculative space. I love genre overlap, but as a general guiding principle, uh, we're going to look at those five specific listed genres. Go ahead and take a second to pick which of those you would most like to see a script created in over the next few hours and over this weekend. I'm going to give it about 60 or so seconds for people to consider this very important question and get their respective votes in. Absolutely fascinating things are happening on my screen with this poll. I love it. I'm going to give it about 15 more seconds, give or take. So, final vote moment. And I'll say 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. With that poll, I believe if I am seeing correctly, I'm seeing magical realism at the top, which is incredibly delightful. Or potential, it may not be tied with horror. That is completely valid. Again, I said this wasn't my time for my soapbox for fallibility and fallibility of genre, but that time may come in 5 to 10 minutes. So we will see. All right. I will just double check moderation wise that I am seeing horror and magical realism currently tied. I'm more than happy to work with that. That sounds fun to me. I will write that down here very quickly. All right. Moving on from genre, the second of the polls that we have is about a central theme. Again, topic with a lot of bleed. You can have many different themes in a script. Themes can be interpreted a lot of different ways. There's some leeway there. But the second poll that's about to drop in the chat will give you 5 broad but still pretty strong in differing directions central themes to choose from. So take a minute now to consider those, knowing that our genre is going to be a mix of magical realism and horror, which I'm enjoying the more I say it. I'm getting more behind that the more I say those two together. Uh, Consider these themes of identity, loneliness, power, family, and survival, and which one you would like to be central to this script. I love that the pie graphs are color coded. It brings me organizationally great joy, and also it means that watching these votes come in is really fun. All right, let's do about 20 more seconds. So this is your last call. Currently, survival is winning with loneliness and power close behind. Everyone saw that horror tag and was like, all right, let's lean into it. And I respect that. Let me be clear. That is not shade. I respect that deeply from the bottom of my heart. I'll give a 10-second marker for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All right. That is survival winning the poll, if I am not much mistaken. Absolutely delightful. Writing that down as we speak. Oh, magical realism and horror as genre and central theme of survival. Delightful. All right. The third poll and the final one for the moment is for a random object to be included in this. Our past two polls, much more general, broad and overarching. This is for a random object to be somewhere in the script. This could be make it central to the plot. This could be what it hinges upon, or this could be a very brief cameo. There is really no telling. I don't know. You don't know. We're going to find out together very shortly. So between locket, letter, binoculars, gift wrap, and a toolbox, uh, go ahead and pick which one you would like to see in this script, knowing that the script is now going to have the genre of horror and magical realism, and in some ways, central themes relating to survival. Going to give it about 20 or so more seconds. Currently, it looks like letter is winning with locket right behind. No gift, nobody, no enthusiasm for gift wrap. Fair enough. Again, I'm not here to judge. I'm just here to write. And I'll give us 10 more seconds with 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Conclusion for the final poll. That puts letter as our random object. Oh boy. So to recap all of that together, currently what we're looking at for prompts that all of you have selected to place upon me and my narrative decisions. Oh, that's delightful. We have a script in the genre of magical realism and horror. We have central themes that will in some way relate to survival. And at some point, there will be a letter. A letter, in my opinion, is an object that can also mean multiple things. I can think of at least one other thing I would term a letter rather than just a physical missive written from one person to another. So we'll see uh, how weird I get with all of these. We're about to see how weird I decide to get with interpreting them. I don't know, and it's going to be fun. Okay, with all of that settled, now we get to dive in. Other things that I know currently that I am working off of is that I know that I am going to have two primary voice actors, which is helpful for me when I am writing an audio script. Number of voices playing off of each other in a scene is very important for many reasons. And in fact, having a soft limit, not necessarily a hard limit, but a soft limit of two voice actors I know I will be working with gives me honestly, that's a framework that helps me to work within. If I had 24 voice actors that I could potentially use, it would be a little bit overwhelming. So I'm going to also add in here, just for my benefit, um, primary voices 2. everyone will also get to experience my many typos. This will occur, and I will apologize for none of them. Okay, brainstorming. Uh, my strategy for writing something like this on a time crunch, which is most certainly what this is to essentially brainstorm an outline with promptness because I need to spend the majority of my time here writing this script. But when it's sometimes referred to as pantsing, when I just pants scripts or works of fiction, typically those are stories. So I'm going to spend the next little while talking through it for everybody's benefit, honestly, especially my own, but also to provide interesting entertainment. Uh, Walking myself through the bones and the skeleton of what I would like to do here. I have a soft limit for the script that I don't particularly plan on it being longer than maybe 10 pages, which equates out to roughly a 10-minute episode. I suspect it will be shorter than that because drafting 10 pages in an hour and a half, 2 hours is still a pretty big ask, but I am certainly not planning to push it beyond that. Let's start large. Magical realism and not just because of the order I've written them in. I'm a firm believer that you can find horror in any genre. So magical realism is actually the thing that's capturing my attention here the most. What does magical realism bring to my brain? To me, that nods to how would I phrase this? To me, that nods to present day or modern day, generally recognizable worlds with additional magical or supernatural elements included. This could be magical powers, this could be creatures. Anyone will tell you, I love a vampire story, I love a werewolf story, I love an angel story. Uh, but those can also, as I say that out loud, in my mind, those might pull a little ways away from full magical realism. I think that those start to straddle the genre more sometimes into full fantasy. It depends on how you wield them, and also depend on how you term them. Apologies. Like, for example, a good instance of a story that I think about a lot that is perhaps more magical realism with some quotes in it, but incorporates ideas of vampire mythology is Midnight Mass. But to me, that is a show that is still magical realism because it's not fully verging into fantasy and it's set in the present day. Hmm. So I want something grounded where the magical elements are, they could be unusual or they could be taken as a matter of course. Uh, Again, magical realism is a genre that I would argue you're welcome to disagree with the definition that I am crafting here. I'm not even fully going to craft a definition. I am working off of what this genre means to me in this moment. And I think that it means very different things in uh, literary fiction, young adult fiction, etc. It's a very similar to steampunk. It's a more recent and more specific um, set of terms. Uh, Central theme survival. This to me speaks to whoever my central characters are going to be. Someone is trying to survive or deal with some form of threat, and that is the primary conflict or problem that these pages of script are dealing with. Uh, these
two primary voices could be a threat to each other. That's not out of the question. Uh, it is easier in some senses for me in the moment as shorthand to assume that they would be perhaps trying to help each other, or collaborative, that they're not immediately the primary threat to each other. What is This is something I don't always do with a script or a story, especially one that moves around. But when I'm scripting audio fiction, one of the biggest things I'm realizing at this moment I'm always focused on is, where are we for the sake of soundscape, for the sake of everybody that is uh, going to be doing some wonderful, wonderful audio editing and soundscape. Uh, Both because I would like them to know what they're working with, and also because I personally would like to give them something fun to play with. There's nothing. There's no super duper boring, for lack of a better term, thing that I put in a script that can't be made more fun. But I love to put fun things in from the get go. And magical realism to me, I'm thinking, I'm thinking liminal spaces. I'm thinking spaces of transit, spaces that feel familiar to me. Train station, airport terminal, gas station. When I was a kid, these are places that I always really started to daydream about something magical occurring to me. I don't know. Uh, it's They're defamiliarized, and so they feel special and they feel exciting. And uh, all of the transit problems they run into in Percy Jackson with, running into monsters on the bus, that type of thing is speaks to me a little bit with magical realism. Train stations, airport terminals, gas stations. What are at least two other locations I can have to play with off the top of my head? I'm going to say theater stages, just because that's something I am personally deeply familiar with. Uh, Interior of a car, uh, the many jokes about cars being a place where you have deep heart to heart conversations, and you're trapped together and you can't get out. And finally, a random object, a letter. Now, this doesn't have to be central. I could, and I still may, no promises, pull this in as something at a later point, but I am, of course, tempted to stick to the spirit of this as closely as possible. And uh, if not, make it the only central point, centralize it to some degree. So, a letter, very old fashioned, from one person to another. Ooh, that's a fun thought. The I don't know if singing telegram carriers is quite the right word, but the image that's now popping to my mind, because it is an out of place yet deeply intriguing way to meet someone, run into someone, etc., is getting a letter handed to you, especially in the midst of some sort of public space. That's not something that's ever straight up happened to me. My letters come in the mailbox. There is something magical and out of place about that. It's almost, if anyone's familiar with Diane Duane's work, with the Wizard series by Diane Duane, it feels a little bit like those books. Ooh, a letter in the middle of a public space. Could the letter be magical? Could it be dangerous? Is it warning you, telling you you're in danger? Is that where survival comes into this? Hmm. This to me also speaks to two primary voices who don't necessarily know each other. One is a recipient, and one is the person carrying or conveying the letter. Not necessarily the one who wrote it, but they're not excluded from that either. This is also beneficial because for me, the two ways that I go about establishing, especially in audio fiction where I don't have physical cues as much to work off of, the two ways that I would go about establishing a character link are either if characters know each other, finding natural ways to slip their names in to indicate their pre-existing relationships, their level of comfort, which is very fun. That's one of my favorite challenges in any script. Or but when you have a case like this potentially where these people don't know each other, then they can introduce themselves like you do to a new person, and that also does heavy plot lifting for me right off the bat. Uh, and it adds an air of mystery to this, which is not a genre that you chose. But again, just like horror, I think you can put mystery into anything. On that note, let's circle back to horror. Horror and survival are linked to me here. Uh, with a relatively small number of script pages, frankly, this is the tighter linked things are, the more cohesive it's going to feel, and the easier time I'm about to have writing it in the next 5 to 10 minutes. So, horror survival. Person A arrives at person A. Let's flip that. Person A is waiting at a location that I will pick. I am leaning towards train station and airport terminal, which I threw in there for liminal spaces. But I'm going to circle back to that in a second. I'm not going to define that for myself just yet. It's waiting at a location. Approached by person B with a letter for them. In my mind, person B could either be very innocuous, blending in with this setting that does speak to the realism aspect of magical realism, or they could be very clearly distinct, akin to seeing somebody where you look at them and go, maybe that person is a time traveler. They're not wearing clothes from this century. Uh, in either case, having a letter handed to you by somebody is, if you're sitting in the middle of the airport, is going to really throw you off. Uh, the letter concerns. Oh, I shouldn't have said time travel. I shouldn't have said time travel because I said it, and the second I said it, it started burrowing into my thoughts. This is the problem with concepts, is that I'll hit a concept and say it as a joke or example, and then I'll never be free. This has happened before and it will happen again. I love it. The letter concerns something. Let's holding myself back from it with both hands. Something dangerous and immediate. Something dangerous and immediate, potentially a threat that is present here right now. This brings to mind for me uh, the immediate horror that came to my mind is one that is almost anathema to the type of scripting I'm about to do, which is the concept of a horror that you can't talk about out loud, you can only write down. I am going to make myself nix that idea immediately because this is an audio only script, and I don't trust quite my ability to fully make that functional in just this time period, though I do love it. Um, Certainly dangerous and immediate and magical, that's naturally. Uh, hmm. Dangerous and immediate. Something magical, something relating to survival. Their survival, the survival of others, the survival of an idea. Hmm. For the sake of putting it down, even though I'm not going to sell myself on it, my immediate thought upon saying time travel was time travel letter from your past or future self. Uh, Not 100% sold on that, but I have to say it anyway. I'm leaning slightly towards as I write this, I'm leaning slightly towards the idea of rain station because I think that's a delightful soundscape. It's not one I've played with in audio fiction before, but I think it's extremely evocative. It allows for sound of trains, sound of announcements over loudspeakers, etc. Hmm. I want something simple, I think. I want something simple here because simple is the best. I can always build off of simple into complex. I can't reverse those necessarily as well. I want something simple, direct, and urgent that this letter is communicating. Something that this letter would, it needs to be in the form of this letter or contained within it. It could be, there could be something that's not just words in this letter. It could be blueprints. It could be a photography, a photograph. That is the word I'm looking for. It could be a photograph. Could be a mirror. I could go full Doctor Who Van Gogh episode with this, borrowing that horror concept. I'm not opposed to that. Don't want to straight out copy it, but that has stuck with me since childhood. If anyone is familiar with that source, something direct, urgent, dangerous, lying, and necessary to your survival or to survival. Period. Hmm. Now I have immediately run into something that I'm going to talk through as it happens because this is the process that happens in my head when I'm scripting. But you're here to see it happen live. Uh, all of fiction has influences, and I always have to remind myself when I've cited multiple works of fiction already on this. I live and die by the stories that I love and the stories that formed me. And so when I am drawn to an idea and it does, pull strongly from or is in conversation with something that I love, I have to, I do not want to plagiarize or copy, but I also have to remind myself that there is nothing that's fully original. Everything is inspired by something else, and especially in genres like this, that is true. I say this because the thought that just came to my mind, especially because of Train Station, is I have recently been revisiting, ooh, been revisiting the Chronicles of Narnia and the concepts of portal fantasy and chosen one stories, etc. The image that is coming to my mind now is of somebody, an ordinary person waiting at a station, being approached by, again, I am bleeding a little bit into fantasy here, in addition to magical realism and horror, but everything overlaps. Uh, Somebody waiting at a station uh, for ooh, somebody waiting at a station with a reasonably ordinary life, but potentially strange latent powers or abilities. The type of almost stereotypical superhero, like lights flicker when you're around or when your emotions get particularly strong and intense. Being approached by somebody from another world, maybe a world, being approached by somebody from another world with a plea for help with some form of person A here has had either some sort of refusal of a call, maybe an adventure that they did not go on. They have been living in magical realism worlds, our world, where they're in the normal everyday world, but they have powers and abilities that do not quite mesh with it. And they have to decide between stepping into another world, potentially a much more dangerous one, fighting for that world's survival. They may be, I think the way I want to incorporate survival here is that person A here has been also in danger in our regular real world. Also, worried, hunted, haunted, on the run by the horrors. I'll figure out where the horrors are going. It's not a script of mine if there's not the horrors capital H somewhere in there, don't worry. uh and so the delineation here becomes our world, the real world with its already magical elements, and a world that should be alien and fantastical to that, but the difference is not that strong. The survival threat is there in either case. And the central crux of this is going to be these two characters coming together who have perhaps been dealing with separate sides of this, separate fights for survival, fears for their life, uh, and accepting that neither of these are things that can really be easily solved or run away from, but that they could at least face them together. Everything I just said makes perhaps more sense in my head than it does to you when I say it out loud, but I kind of know where I'm going now and I like it a lot. Okay. We're incorporating survival into that is getting tied along with essentially the arc of this is going to start with characters at odds in confusion, separate worlds from one another, and is ending with some sort of connection, friendship, essentially agreement that we are turning and facing the horrors, the the things we are fleeing from in some sort of tandem. Yeah. All right. Characters. This part, honestly, yeah, I somewhat know. I say I somewhat know where I'm going now. You are about to watch me probably write three sentences and then immediately lose track of my own threads, but that is okay. That happens. I want two characters here. Person A is individual in our world, recognizable. Uh, I'm honestly going to say, might change this detail later. I'm honestly going to say, uh, early 20s college student, maybe going back to school on the train. That is the current plan. Potentially at top of the script, maybe getting off a phone phone call with their roommate and or getting out of just surviving bad horror times. What those horror times look like will be determined shortly. Person B, um, from the magical side of this and the horror side of this, more than the realism side of this. I think they've been in this world for a little while, doing badly. Uh, we have to have a little bit of, we have to have, I was going to say we have to have a little bit of suffering to make the ending more fun, which feels slightly cruel of me, but we put horror on this. That's fine. Uh, is here with letter formalized magical petition. a contract of allegiance against her, something like that. Uh, going to do just first names for the moment. Uh, person B, I'm, kind of riffing through my mental thoughts of, for lack of a better, for lack of a better term, names that kind of scream fantasy protagonist in another life, not necessarily this story to me. The ones that came to my mind were either Phoenix or Ember, so those are potential. Individual in our world, recognizable. Uh, for anybody curious about the process also going on in my mind right now, this is one of many times when, not every time, sometimes I start a script with specific thoughts on character, gender, pronouns, etc. Many times I have no idea about that until later, or not at all. So no idea this time for either of these people. And I love that. Person in our world. Visual, recognizable. Mm, could have an Alex. We could have a Charlotte. Could have a Joe. We could have, let me think one more. So I've got four more options to choose from. Hmm. A, this is all the part that is always going to stall anyone out is thinking up a name. That's why I'm doing it now, because I'm going to pick a name, commit, and then never have to think about it again. I'm refuse to trip myself up once I actually start writing dialogue lines. Uh, Morgan, at the risk of reusing a name that I do love to use. I do love the name Morgan. All right. Person A, person B, I'm drawn to Ember. I like that name. Phoenix also rocks, but I like that name. Person A, I do like Morgan, but I also like Alex. So I'm going to run with Alex here. All right. I've got my character names. I have got not a beat by beat outline so much as an understanding of where we are, what's occurring, what the conversation is, and vaguely thematically where I want us to end up and what the stakes are. I'm going to take quick 120 seconds. I'm not going to go anywhere, get off this stream. I'm going to take quick 120 seconds to drink water, and then I am going to immediately start scripting with what we have right now. All right. I am back. I was about to say I'm ready to go, which I don't think is quite accurate. I am prepared to go, which is more accurate. So let's start this out. Uh, Something I am reminding myself I can do in real time because it is a strategy I've been trying to use more. Is that when I don't know something, it is beneficial to me to write more or less straight through in a situation like this, with the caveat that if I don't know something, I will not necessarily pause to solve it so much as bracket out what I need to be in that space and return to it later. So let's start with a attables. Get that out of there. Station, uh, waiting area, announcements over the loudspeaker. Uh, Trains passing by, announcements over the loudspeaker. First incidental voice line that we would need from somebody. Um, I want them to have gotten here early, or do I want them to be just rushing in? I think I want them to be getting here early because I would want Ember to be just rushing in, and it makes for a better contrast. All right, solving that right now. Be here early. Immediately ran into a delightful question, which is how do voice memos work? I've never given one before. Uh, in an eventuality where, ooh, no, I'm going to overlap these. The logistics of how this will work, I may come back and fix later. We're listening to the other side of a phone conversation. And this is why I generate multiple names so that I can then immediately steal those other names I didn't use and be free from the greatest struggle for every writer, which is what do I call these people? Um, distant as in how they're speaking, not where their audio is, but that's not a me. That, that every script is always remind myself that's not a me problem. That is for a later stage. Um, This is the part where I will be talking a lot less, as we can tell already, because I am typing faster than I talk. Nope, I'm not allowing myself to edit a single word I've written so far. I don't have time for that. That's later. Uh, yeah, that's the word I want. I'm going to drop this all down to a new page really quickly. Hopefully that is keep upable with just for my own clarity of vision. Ooh, no, no, I know what I want to do. Uh, Um, yeah, I know what I want to do. I want to like start that up here. That is, there we go. Thank you, autocorrect. This is the type of direction where I'm putting that in my brain because I'm almost envisioning like the editing picture I'm creating as I write this. But of course, I am not editing this. And so all of these come with the caveat that someone else can read this and take this in a full different direction. I get control of the dialogue, but I love seeing what happens when stage directions and editing notes get taken in a new place. It's really fun. It's part of the collaborative process. Let's see. I'm trying something with Ember that I may or may not keep, and we'll see how it goes as a dialogue convention. Problem with being like I'm going to have adjacent nods to high fantasy, portal fantasy, etc. in my script that is currently centered in a magical realism horror world is that asks me to start throwing out world building on the fly, which is about the most terrifying thing I could possibly do. I'm going to try to work my way around that with my whole entire heart. Oh, goodness gracious. Um, yeah, first bracket. I'll come back to that. I don't know what I want to put there. I'll actually like straight up chosen one refusal of the call first. Do I want to get with this? Is a great question. Um, this question I can leave till the next page because I'm going to just keep writing. My favorite tag to ever put on a dialogue line. This will never change. No, I'm not going to do that yet. I need that later down. I don't want to quite play that card just yet. No, verify. Sometimes I do have to edit as I go. Recognize I said I didn't do that. I was actively lying. I do that sometimes. Problem with making a character a college student is that you have to start name dropping colleges. But we said magical realism, which means the real world. I fear writing in the real world, which is why I love that y'all chose this for me, is because that is out of all of those genres the one that I have done, but have done possibly the least. And I've done it much more horror than magical leading. So I love this. Um, Yeah, let's placehold that with if anyone is from NYU, I have not attended that location, and I am sorry in advance for whatever I'm about to do here. Uh, whatever artistic license I'm about to take. Uh, Did I say that to a stranger who just bumped into me on the train station? No, but Alex is not me. Um, oh, it's so hard to do takes of scenes with limited plotting time. It's great. It's a great challenge. It's just it feels wild. Um, hmm. There's going to be a shift here, and I'm trying to decide what the impetus of that shift is to play around with. This is very much shaping up to me to be a single continuous scene, is what this is going to look like. My either single continuous scene or a few different interconnected scenes would be what we're going for. And right here, this is probably going to be a singular ongoing conversation for the full, essentially quote unquote episode. Um, we'll see. Well, now that I've said that, I might be about to break that. Um, very little airspace in between. It's not like I'm talking different phone recordings happening over a period of days. Um, oh, I know what. Yep, no, no, I that makes sense. I know what I'm. Okay, I know what I'm gonna do here. The only thing that contrasts with the absolute panic of I don't know where I'm going is when you go, oh, now I do, and it feels beautiful for a brief moment, and then you go right back down the roller coaster. Um, yeah. So excited to hear sound design for this. I'll be honest. Um, is contract the right word? Have I been playing too much D&D here? Is that what's happening? Have I been playing too many warlocks? Well, the answer to that is I've always been playing too many warlocks. But contract, agreement, a letter of alliance, treaty? Can I say treaty? I'll say treaty for now. I'll come back and not say treaty later when I think of a word that makes more sense. Um, because but treaty is fun because it is overly formal for what she is actually. It is not what we would use as the correct term for what she has, which makes it more interesting. Um, Hallway, yeah. going to be 15 so that I can hit rule of three. You wanna see this. I'm going to put this in orange because I'm almost really going to change it. I don't know if I like it still. Um, R and now please enjoy this very visual descriptor for what is famously a medium that does not have that. And we will circle back to how I'm going to mess with this in a second. Uh, shadow in the shadows. Yep, nope, no. I will delete that, but we'll all know that I wrote it. Here in the shadows. Um, this one of shadows. I guess I'm copying my own notes a little bit here, but that's from a draft no one's ever seen, so this wins. Um, what is the funniest, weird, innocuous thing I could throw this next to like completely pretzel stand? been using both it and they, and I'll probably go back and fix that for the blanket. The scary thing we're never going to see that is in the shadows that is following. That is a later problem. I can't do that right now. Problem for later. I tend to edit as I go, which of course does not work in a circumstance like this. And I'm lucky enough that I will get to have a absolutely wonderful editor to hang out with in a little bit uh, in the next hour or so when this draft is done. So I am holding myself back with both hands. Uh, I wanna. Did she introduce herself to them before? I'm 90% sure she did. Yes, she did. I don't know how to communicate the thing I'm thinking of, but I have seen it before. Um, one large single room. Yeah, that makes sense. Mm, I should close that. Or not, maybe I shouldn't do that. Went away. There we go. Better. Ooh, yeah, this is where I want it to go. I have so many more and so many fewer pages than I. uh, for everyone watching, I love you very much. Hard to explain the fugue state I'm in right now. This is so much fun and so strange. I love it. Um, and then a fast beat one. And ideally, we'll have a 5 minutes is going to be the last thing I want to hit. Um, Halfway through is about the point when I can start giving myself my license to have a character talk for for more than a sentence or two and do a slight. I wouldn't term it monologue, but I can let myself off the restraint a little bit here. I think. I just want to make it not forced, but that doesn't mean I won't do it. Some of this will come out later. a part where I start to love my own characters, which is always nice. Um, da, da, da. Struggle that I always run into, which I'm forcing myself to just make a choice and we'll edit it later as well here. With whenever I'm working with surreal, speculative, magical, any magical system, especially any magical system, anything that has powers, is needing to have enough specifics to not make it feel generic, to make it believable and real and lived in, but also specifics can be the death of, in this case, forcing me to make claims to do world building that I won't necessarily be able to back off the top of my head. So threading a line between that is always a really interesting process. And I'm not positive how to do it here, but I'm going to just have to make a choice, and then we'll see if that choice holds water. Essentially, that's the strategy I've sort of got to take here. I like light glass air, especially for establishing that brackets undetermined horror creature brackets is shadow based essentially. Um, again, not necessarily a stage direction will either show up in the editing or in whether or not this will be very different question. Obviously, not visible. But fun fact about me is that I am a stage writer as well as an audio writer, and so a lot of my audio writing has sort of stage directions in it that may never come out. But to me, they're still important for the spirit of the thing, even if you're not actually hearing them for the viewers. If nothing else, then actors and sound designers, it's fun to know what would be going on. Some audio fiction, in my opinion, lives only in a pure audio space, and some audio fiction is physical stories that we're doing through an audio medium, both of which are wonderful. Um, do you think I want to? I'm throwing the words portal fantasy around, and they are not an accurate genre summation, to be clear. This is again coming off of a lot of stories I've been just engaging with and thinking with recently in, essentially my childhood. I do trying to decide exactly how much I want to specify some things and how, what story I'm telling here, essentially. Hmm. And as with all short stories, what I essentially the big thing that I would be looking for editing here is that there's a lot of scaffolding happening here about like plot and world building and fantastical things and magic and monsters, etc. But returning to that central theme of survival, the crux of what this script of 6 to 10 pages is actually about or needs to be about is about these two people and them going from point A to point B. Uh, as with most genre stories, the genre is beautiful, wonderful, but that is actually what's happening here. So I need to modulate those not getting in each other's way. I think I want something else here, but I'm not sure what it is, and I need to move on, so I will return to it. Nope, that might be a lot. Let me reread how we got here. Do I want to do that? That might be too general. What did I write up here? And now, now I'm gonna get to it. Oh God. Ah. Should be in quotes and italicized, and I will likely decide I don't like my language and I will change it. But I grew up on Shakespeare and I will use that knowledge for sounding overly pretentious in dramatic, magical concepts. We're approaching the ending enough that I'm also having the fun. I can see two different ways that this script ends, essentially, both of which go with that unifying idea of we're both in danger, we're in danger for our lives, we should unify so that we are perhaps less in danger. And one of those is Alex moving more towards Ember and Ember moving more towards Alex. It's not really an evocative statement, but it is to me. Um, like this is kind of the point where I have to decide which of those I'm leading to, I guess. So I can take a minute to essentially make that decision because this is the point where that would start to come into play. And I don't want to proceed with sometimes I can proceed without knowing what's going on, but like where the final beat we're heading towards, I should know before I start to put the train tracks down. Alternately, there's the third world. Of course, that's the one I'm drawn to because, you know, who would I be if I wasn't? Dee, 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 dee. I do love saying ambiguous lines. And I swear it's intentional. I typically have a couple things that when characters don't finish lines, I kind of know where they're going, but unsaid things are fun. Two more things I need to. I think I know the two and a half. I think I know the order they need to be in. Heavy emphasis on think. Mm. Ah, trying to marry like action with theme is something I love doing, and doing it on the fly feels wild. Because normally I'll go for like a 3 hour walk and start brainstorming like wild. Hmm. Do I have any consistent terminology for the monster in the shadows? Absolutely not. That again is a later problem for a little while later. I want this to be a time where I have to abandon any mental blocking I've set up for this, um, for the sake of making this story work. It doesn't really matter who is where. I know who needs to be doing what. I can't believe that. No, I can't believe. This makes sense for me that I'm putting a tiny action beat in the middle of an extremely short script. Audio editing team, I love you and I'm sorry. I don't have fun. I was given no restrictions. I'm going wild as I must. I want to give you too many fun things. Um, where did I put it? There it is. Might actually be able to hit the edgy beats I'm thinking of. This is great. last few grace notes, or like last two. To be clear, I'm talking like last few line of dialogue. When I am in doubt, um, that um, I go up to the top and I see where in the world I started. I don't think I can totally do that. I need to keep. This is supposed to be a happy ending necessarily, but um, I'm not going to fully undercut it and be like, let's go for coffee. But it would be funny. Um, what is the nature of this dynamic? As with many dynamics, I write, your mileage may vary. Interpret it every way you want. I think that's more fun. Um, that too, maybe. Thing about cliches is that they're good. Is the problem. And also in genre fiction, every time that you tell yourself, I must avoid this, ask yourself if you are doing it because uh, it would genuinely be better if you avoided it, or because you are adverse to committing to the genuity. That's not the term. The genuine tropes of the concept. This is a question I ask myself every time. I don't know what the answer is right here at all. Okay. If I if you think I know anything that I just put onto this page, I don't. I have immediately forgotten all of it. All right. That is me writing the words end script. So I am going to say that is the conclusion of my first drafting portion. With that said, we're going to take a 20-minute break. We will be back shortly, restreaming with the second half of this, in which we will go through some editing, cleaning this up, second round of what you do when you have the initial elements of a script put down on the page, what you do with that to tighten it up and move it to the next step of audio drama and podcast creation. All right. Thank you for uh, being here during my writerly possession. Very interested to see where the story goes, and for your lovely votes on these concepts. Uh, Goodbye.